A family intervention shatters my relationship, forcing me to confront deep-seated fears and betrayals. Will I choose love or family? Discover my journey to reclaim my happiness. The beginning of a beautiful connection. I remember the first time I met my partner back in 2020 like it was yesterday. I was just finishing my undergrad studies and he was there, a fellow student in my field. We hit it off immediately, diving into deep conversations about everything from our personal philosophies to our cultural backgrounds. It felt like we were kindred spirits, our values aligning perfectly. He was funny, smart, ambitious, and I found myself falling hard for him, and I still am. Just 2 months in, we made it official, both knowing deep down that we were destined for more, perhaps even marriage someday. But of course, we didn't rush. We were still focused on our studies. We shared the same religious background, which provided a strong foundation for our relationship. However, our differing ethnicities made us both apprehensive about how our families would react. I feared my parents' traditional values would clash with my love for him. Most ethnic families prefer their children to date within their culture, and while I hoped they'd come around, I couldn't shake my anxiety. My partner, on the other hand, had already introduced me to his family, who welcomed me with open arms. I envied that ease, wishing I could have the same experience with my own parents. When I finally mustered the courage to tell my family about my relationship, the reaction was anything but supportive. My mom discovered a birthday card from him and confronted me. While she initially didn't seem angry, everything changed when I revealed his ethnicity. Her freakout was overwhelming, and my dad's response was dismissive. They wanted nothing to do with my relationship, insisting I end it. I felt crushed, but held on to hope, thinking maybe they'd come around eventually. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey. For the next 3 years, my partner and I continued our relationship in secret. We traveled together and shared countless memories, but I constantly felt the weight of the dishonesty. I justified my actions, telling myself my parents hadn't created a safe space for honesty. I longed for a day when I could openly share my love without fear of judgment. But as we grew closer to the idea of engagement, the pressure mounted. My dad hadn't spoken to me in years, and my mom was more understanding but still cautious. As 2024 approached, I held on to the hope that things would change. Then came the unexpected twist. My sister, usually the peacemaker in our family, expressed a desire to meet my partner. I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could sway my dad's opinion and help bridge the gap between my love and my family. I was excited. After all the stress we'd endured, this felt like a turning point. My partner and I discussed what to share during their meeting, wanting to maintain some privacy. We both knew honesty was crucial, but fear of my dad's reaction loomed over us. But not long after that meeting, I sensed something was off with my sister. She started distancing herself from me, and I couldn't figure out why. How could I have anticipated the shocking confrontation that awaited me? I had no idea that the real storm was brewing just beneath the surface, and it was about to turn my world upside down. Part 2. The Intervention. As the new year rolled in, I felt a growing unease. My intuition was screaming that something wasn't right. One day, my mom sent me on an errand at a suspiciously timed hour. I returned home to find my entire family gathered in the living room, an ominous air surrounding them. My heart raced as they motioned for me to sit down. The moment felt surreal, and I braced myself for what was to come. They dropped a bombshell that left me reeling. They had hired an investigator to dig into my partner's life and our relationship. My heart sank. I learned later that the investigator was a lie. My sister had gone through my personal belongings, rummaging through my messages and emails. She proudly confessed to it later, and I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. How could she invade my privacy like that? It felt like a complete violation, and I was utterly humiliated. What followed was an onslaught of accusations. They painted my partner as a monster, a liar, a gaslighter, and a manipulator. They claimed I was a victim, forced into this relationship against my will. Each word felt like a dagger, cutting deeper into my heart. I was overwhelmed as they recounted every detail of our relationship, every trip we had taken, and every moment we had shared. I had never felt so exposed and ashamed. The ultimatum they delivered was chilling. I had to end my relationship or risk losing my family. The pressure was suffocating, and in that moment, I felt paralyzed. Didn't know how to defend myself or my partner against the tide of accusations. It was 6 against 1, and I felt stripped of my voice and autonomy. The shame weighed heavily on my soul, and I found myself nodding along, agreeing to their demands just to end the confrontation. They forced me to block my partner, and my sister sent him a text ending our relationship. I felt numb. I had surrendered, unable to fight back against their relentless pressure. The days that followed were filled with a mix of relief and despair. My family treated me with kindness, but it felt hollow. They were celebrating their victory over what they deemed a toxic man, while I was trapped in a prison of their making. I was on house arrest, my every move monitored. My soulmate had been ripped from my life, and I spiraled into a dark place of confusion and heartache. But as the days turned into weeks, a flicker of anger began to ignite within me. I was angry at my sister for her betrayal, at my father for his bigotry, and at my entire family for their invasion of my privacy. I knew I had made mistakes, but I started to realize that the lack of support and understanding from my family had contributed to this mess. Part 3. The Anger Awakens. Weeks had passed since that devastating day, and I was slowly emerging from the fog of numbness. Anger replaced the emptiness I had felt for so long. I directed my fury at my sister, the one person I thought would support me unconditionally. We had been so close, sharing everything, and now it felt like she had become a stranger. I couldn't comprehend how she could betray me like this. I felt a deep sense of loss, mourning the sister I once knew. It was as if she had died, and I was left with a hollow shell. I cried to my mom, pouring out my heart about the injustice of the situation. I told her how unfair it was that they had forced me to cut ties with someone I loved so deeply. I wanted to experience the relationship for myself, to make my own choices, and to learn from my decisions. My mom listened, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. She urged me to talk to my dad again, to express my feelings, and to stand up for what I wanted. She said it was time to consider marrying my partner, even if it meant facing the consequences. Her words gave me strength, but I couldn't shake the fear of my father's reaction. To express my feelings, I decided to send my dad a heartfelt letter. I poured my soul into it, apologizing for any perceived disrespect, and emphasizing how much I valued their support. I hoped this letter would open a dialogue and bridge the gap between us. But what happened next shattered my hopes. My father didn't respond directly. Instead, he forwarded my letter to my sister, who exploded in anger. Her words cut deep, accusing me of manipulation and betrayal. I felt like I was being attacked on all fronts. My heart raced as I confronted my father, only to find a side of him I had never seen before. He raised his voice, hurling threats at me as if I were a child. I had never felt so alone, so broken. In that moment, I realized the gravity of my situation. I was caught between my love for my partner and the unyielding expectations of my family. As I faced my father's wrath, I felt a sense of urgency building within me. I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, but how? The battle lines were drawn, and I knew I had to make a choice that would change everything. Part 4. A new perspective. After that confrontation with my father, I felt utterly devastated. I spent days in a haze, grappling with the emotional fallout. I was torn between my family's expectations and my own desires. But somewhere deep inside, I knew I had to break free from the cycle of manipulation and control. My therapist had been a beacon of hope during this time, guiding me through the storm. I started to recognize the patterns of abuse within my family. My father's behavior wasn't just cruel, it was a manifestation of the toxic environment I had grown up in. I realized that my sister's actions were driven by her own insecurities and a desperate need to please our parents. The more I reflected, the more I understood that I wasn't alone in this struggle. Therapy helped me navigate my anger and disappointment. I learned that it was okay to prioritize my happiness, even if it meant going against my family's wishes. I couldn't continue to live in fear of their judgment. It was time to reclaim my autonomy and make decisions that aligned with my values. I began to focus on my education and my future, recognizing that I needed to build a life for myself outside of my family's influence. With my partner's unwavering support, I began to explore the idea of a life together, one where we could create our own path. We discussed our dreams, our goals, and what it would look like to stand up against the odds. It was empowering to envision a future where we could be truly happy, free from the constraints of my family's expectations. But even as I found strength in our love, I knew the road ahead would be challenging. Would my family ever understand? Would they ever accept my partner? As I contemplated these questions, I also began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with my dad. I knew I had to stand my ground. I had to express my feelings, not just for my own sake, but also for the sake of my relationship. The thought of facing him again sent waves of anxiety through me, but I was determined to be brave. Part 5. The showdown. The day arrived when I knew I had to speak to my dad again. My heart raced as I approached him, a mix of fear and determination coursing through my veins. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but as I stood in front of him, the words felt stuck in my throat. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of all the progress I had made in therapy. "Dad, I need to talk to you about my relationship," I began, my voice shaking but resolute. He looked at me, his expression a mix of disdain and disbelief. "I've thought a lot about everything that happened. I want you to understand how much my partner means to me." His reaction was swift and harsh. He raised his voice, dismissing my feelings as if they were insignificant. I felt the familiar wave of despair wash over me, but I fought to stay grounded. I couldn't let his words shatter my resolve. "I love him, Dad. He's not the villain you think he is. I need you to trust me." As I spoke, I could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. He unleashed a torrent of accusations, claiming I was throwing my future away for a man he deemed unworthy. Each word felt like a blow, but I stood firm. I refused to let him dictate my happiness any longer. "I won't let you control my life anymore," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I'm an adult, and I deserve to make my own choices." In that moment, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was finally taking a stand for myself and my love. But his fury escalated, and I knew I was treading dangerous waters. "Choose him and you'll lose me," he warned, his voice dripping with contempt. I felt the weight of his ultimatum bearing down on me. Would I choose my family or my love? It was a decision I never wanted to face, and yet here I was, on the precipice of a choice that would define my life. Part 6. The choice and a new beginning. In the aftermath of that heated confrontation, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. I had finally found my voice, but the cost was steep. I spent the following days in a whirlwind of emotions, grappling with the weight of my father's ultimatum. I had a choice to make, and every moment felt heavy with uncertainty. As I reflected on my relationship, I realized how much I valued my partner's unwavering support. He had stood by me through the darkest times, helping me navigate the emotional turmoil created by my family. I knew I didn't want to lose him, but the thought of severing ties with my family was terrifying. After days of soul-searching, I made a decision. I would choose love. I reached out to my partner, pouring out my heart to him. I explained my struggles, my fears, and my determination to create a life together, even if it meant facing the consequences of my family's rejection. He understood, offering his unwavering support and encouragement. With newfound clarity, I began to take steps toward independence. I sought new opportunities, working to secure a steady income while completing my education. I knew I had to build a life for myself, one that aligned with my values and desires. No longer would I allow my family's opinions to dictate my choices. I was ready to forge my own path, even if it meant walking away from my family's expectations. While the road ahead would be challenging, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. I was finally embracing my identity, my love, and my dreams. I knew there would be obstacles, but I was ready to face them head on. My partner and I were committed to building a future together rooted in love and mutual respect. As I took that first step toward independence, I felt a flicker of hope. I was determined to create a life where I could thrive, free from the shadows of the past. With love as my guiding force, I knew I could overcome anything. I was ready to embrace this new beginning and define my own happiness, no matter what challenges lay ahead.